Hey, everybody. I want to open up the episode by giving a quick introduction to our guest. Our guest this week is Jordan Kurtz of Comments from the Peanut Gallery over on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all of that good stuff. Jordan makes amazing MMA-centric content based out of the Denver, Colorado area and really does an amazing job. And this podcast was really fun for me because you kind of got to see the drive behind somebody who is definitely a inspiration of mine to just do your own thing and just do it. That was a big part of this podcast was, how he realized that anything that can really come up in life is can be an opportunity or an obstacle. He chose to look at it as an opportunity. And he always says yes. That's like the main through line of this podcast. So I think that you'll really enjoy that. But enough on that. You will get to listen to him in just a few minutes. I want to go ahead and do some house cleaning real fast. I want to make sure that everybody who has the ability to listen to this on iPhones or Apple products, make sure that you are going to the Apple Podcasts app and you're reviewing the show. Give us some reviews. When I say us, I mean me, because those things really help. It makes it so that, people who are just kind of, searching the internet can kind of find this podcast and can possibly, become big fans of it. And that'll be good for us. For me, again, just me, not us. I don't know why I keep saying us. You can also listen on Spotify or any other podcast platform of your choice. If you listen on a platform and it is not there, the This Just In podcast is not there, let me know. Let me know through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, if you're friends with me there. And we'll see what's going on. And we'll try to make it so that it's available, wherever you do your normal listening, just so that we can make it as easy as possible. And last but not least, we are also on YouTube. So if you want to see the video of the show, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The link is in the description of this episode here. Give the video a thumbs up, help that algorithm. And that's it. So for your listening pleasure, I present Jordan Kurtz.
It ran long and I didn't get back to the office yet. So
Well,
it works.
Hey, it works, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely, brother, absolutely. And no, I've done 1,000,001 fighter interviews where they're sitting in the car or driving in traffic or wherever. So ain't no thing.
I'm sure. Well, we'll go ahead and give a little bit of background to this interview. So, I became known, or I became aware of Jordan here years ago when I was I was producing a local Colorado MMA talk show. And basically Jordan took me aside and said, look, Colorado ain't big for the both of us. You got to get out of the business. So I was like, all right, man. All right. I'm done with Colorado MMA reporting and podcasting and whatnot. But all of that isn't true. I just kind of found him through other fans of our show, and I really liked what he did. But let's go ahead and let it come out of the horse's mouth. Jordan, tell the people about yourself.
Yeah, man. Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it. It's always great to connect with other people who share some similar passions for, especially for the sport that we have. It's a very niche sport as a whole. It's grown a lot over the last year, but for hardcore fans who really understand some of the nuances and the more advanced, just past the surface level of what ESPN shoves down your throat, it's nice to be able to talk to some people like yourself who have some time around the game and who have been in some positions with a lot of the same people. I mean, obviously, a lot of my teammates at Factory X.
Mhm.
Myself, I started doing the comments for the Peanut Gallery podcast a little over 3 years ago. We're running at, like, about episode 104-ish, around in there now at this point. So, steady steam forward, moving ahead. That parlayed itself into an entire, basically an entire vertical of stuff. I started doing photography and videography to promote the podcast, which in turn just kind of sparked, I guess, a little bit of an interest, but also something that I had a little bit of a natural gift with, I guess. I mean, anybody can capture media, but not everybody can take a picture, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can go and press the button, but there's a lot that goes into knowing how to compose a frame, knowing how to, get the right lighting elements into a shot that, are really there to showcase what your subject is. So, I mean, that was just all something that I've been able to learn along the way, and I really and truly, Justin, I learned that on the fly, which, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a cool thing that I feel like, I'm not one of these guys who is traditionally trained and learned from going to school for a lot of this stuff. It was just more so, it was out of a lot of trial, error, and hustle. I think Yusuf Zalal, Jordan Tony, Austin Jones, Brandon Royval, like all of my teammates, when I first started learning how to create media, we just spent, like hours upon hours working together of figuring out, okay, this is what this setting on the camera does. This looks like shit. This looks good. This is something that we'll use again, or we have a future for, to figure out what this would be purposed in. And then this one, not so much. So
It's
I
almost
have all
very
of those
indicative
guys to
of the
thank.
sport itself. It's very indicative of the sport itself. I think that there's people like you and me in the world. That's just how we learn. Like, I had never touched a soundboard before I worked for the Final Bell, but I was like, I want to work with these guys. I'm going to figure it out. And so
Oh yeah.
it's all very, like, a lot of the people that work in this industry, or definitely your industry more than mine anymore, but in that industry, they have that hard work learner's mentality, like always a student. And that translates directly into martial arts.
Definitely. And I also feel like a lot of it comes to, you got to be a student of it, but you can't be afraid to step up when the time comes.
Mhm.
When the pitch comes down the pipeline, you've got to be ready to swing the bat. If you're sitting there and you're just letting opportunities pass you by, then you're also never going to grow. Or if you're also waiting on, or you're always thinking, oh, it's not the right time, or maybe down the way, then you're not going to progress as, maybe as fast as that. That's one thing that I feel like I've always done, is stepped up in the moment when the opportunities came. Trevor O'Connor, one of your old buddies with the Final
Mhm.
Bell, was one of those guys who gave me my first commentary opportunity ever, 5 minutes before a show. It was a No Mercy show back in 2019.
Yeah.
Somebody, whoever it was that was supposed to be calling the fights within that night, no showed. Yusuf comes and gets me in through the door, and I'm wearing one of my Peanut Gallery sweaters, and Trevor just happens to see me. And mind you, we hadn't met yet in person, but he recognized the logo from the shirt. He
Yeah.
said, "Hey, this kid knows MMA. He's talked on a microphone before, not live yet, but let's put a headset on him and let's see what he can do." And obviously, that opportunity materialized itself into a second opportunity, which then, put me on to multiple other promotions. Now, I've done commentary for pay-per-views, I've done commentary for local shows. I've had an incredible opportunity to grow within the sport by saying yes, by not being afraid when the opportunity came. When it was a situation of, oh, well, I've only been shooting photos for a little while, but oh, hey, you want to go shoot these photos cage side for LFA? Yes, absolutely. And then, was able to just continue to grow off of those little things. But if I was scared, or if I wasn't ready to step up when that opportunity came, I don't know where I would. I can't honestly tell you where I would be, because, I stepped up, and that's what's allowed each opportunity to keep on growing. I
Yeah.
feel like it's very similar to, just like how you mentioned my arc is kind of like fighting. I mean, You're only as good as your last outing. You're only as good as your last fight. You're only as good as that last bit of content that you put out, or that last short film, the podcast conversation, whatever. And now, I have stuff that comes out so often all the time that I don't even think about that. If something sucks, well, you know what? You got to show up tomorrow and you got to do something again.
You always
If
got the
something was
next one.
great, exactly. And that's why I try not to get too high either. Because if you put out something that, oh, hey, cool, that's awesome. You had a great fight week piece for, Vince Cachero or Alex Hernandez or Dustin Jacoby or any of these guys, like say for this weekend that I'm doing stuff for them. But guess what? Next week, there's an entire new group of guys on the team or people that I work with that are fighting. So it's not to demean or devalue what their fight is or what their content is. It's just that in order to keep up and stay relevant, you have to be putting out a high volume of stuff at this point, I feel like, in the game.
Yeah.
That I don't know, that's just maybe it's because I'm so close to it. I don't know.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I've never been the guy that says yes right away. And that's one of my flaws, hands down, because this podcast started in April of 2020, or I think it was actually March of 2020, right before things got a little crazy. A little crazy, a lot crazy, who knows. But before all of that happened, I started this podcast and it was just to talk to people. And at the first sign of adversity, I was like, oh, it's all over. And I didn't think I was going to bring it back. I honestly didn't. And then it took talking to like complete strangers on the internet, like speaking with my buddy Sam in San Francisco and Will Pounder out in California, the porn star that I just interviewed last week. That it wasn't even me saying it, but I was like, oh, come on my podcast. And I was like, oh shit, I don't actually have a podcast anymore. And so I just had to dig it back up. And, saying yes is a hard thing. Tell me about a time, and I want you to go back. I want you to go way back. Like, what's the first time you remember saying yes?
Are you meaning like as far as like as a professional now, like since like the peanut gallery has started,
No, I want to
or
go further. I want to go to young Jordan. What was your first yes? I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this because the opportunity is there. And I know there's going to be an upside on the other side of this thing.
Yeah, I guess that's tough because it was almost like this whole thing has been a rebirth for me. Like I went through some pretty crazy life adversity right at the beginning of it, and like just all of what I was coming out of to then what hit me like a brick right at the start of it, and then was able to rise up. Like that's kind of the yes to me. Like because for a long time, I guess right out of school, I got into the finance world. I worked for a pretty big financial firm or a financial company. And I thought that, like, yeah, I'm going to make this happen. Like, no matter what it is, like, I'm going to figure out how to make that nut, then go on into working whatever passion it is. But I don't know, like, I was never really completely all in with something like that. Like, this is the first real time where, like I say, I went through some crazy life adversity and my own trials and tribulations to say the least. And coming out of it, this was my savior. Like this was this was the turning point in my life. You say yes. Like I wanted to start the podcast up a couple of years before it actually came to fruition. But I just wasn't in the greatest sort of relationship sort of situation, all of that. It was toxic all the way around. And I'll accept my own doing within that sort of situation. I'm not putting that on anybody else.
Yeah.
I accept my own lack of initiative prior to that point of not saying, go pursue what makes you happy in life. And I only say that, Justin, and I don't mean to like not answer the question, but it's because I wasn't happy before this started, if that makes sense. Like I got out of school and I was just like the what's next. Like I graduated from CSU, had an incredible time in college, and then get out into the real world and it's just like like this is it. Like this is what life is. You go and you got to answer to the clock to be able to, to pay the bills, whatever, and you just don't really like what you do, and I went from, from the financial firm to I went to selling products for another big corporate company, and I did that for a few years. Didn't do bad. I mean, it was a commissions based job, and I'm decent at selling because I can speak well, and I know how to sell. I just know sales psychology in that way, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. But I felt like I was taking the easy route. You know what I'm saying? Like I was taking the comfortable route that I know that, okay, if I keep on just punching this clock and keep on showing at this job and keep on throwing on the monkey suit and going through the motions, that it's going to net this X, Y, and Z paycheck that covers my expenses, blah, blah, blah. I live a, fairly comfortable lifestyle, have the couple weeks of paid vacation per year, the so on, so forth American dream that they want to tell you it is. But I wasn't happy. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so really my yes moment was UFC 220. Like I used to always have a bunch of friends that would come and watch the fights at my house. I would always have fight nights. And then we would all obviously, when you're around with a bunch of your buddies, you have conversation about what's going on, what you're watching on TV, what all the up and down of the card and all that sort of shit is happening. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I should have asked. Can I swear on your podcast?
No, we keep it very clean, given the fact that I just had a guy who fucks on camera for a guest. No, I'm kidding. Say
Fair point. Totally, I totally forgot about that. But I just started thinking like, oh man, like I should ask first. But
no,
but yeah.
I never want anybody to like. As soon as you start changing a little bit of how you speak, it changes almost everything about that person. And if you're a person that doesn't, oh shit, I'm just gonna hit my microphone. If you're a person that doesn't cuss, cool, that's fine. But if you're a guy that or gal that does cuss and that's just how you speak, you're never going to get to know the true person by censoring that. And then so like anybody that comes on the show can speak however they want, minus some things that we won't talk about. But
yeah, no, I feel you there. But yeah, so it was that night, and I had just a bunch of buddies over who we had watched that card. And for those who don't know, that was UFC Boston, and that was Stipe against Francis. That was the first go round of that matchup. But it was a jam packed card all the way up through and through. All those New England cartel guys showed out. There was just bangers throughout the entire card. But I had called a lot of those matchups pretty well, or I had spoken to them, or a lot of things was like the, what I'm saying right there as watching, then that's what the commentator is then saying like the next thing as we're hearing it on the broadcast. And so just like
very similar in that sense.
Yeah, like the get this guy a headset sort of moment. So I had some good friends and the right people around me that really kind of helped influence me to, yes, start doing this podcast. Like you're too smart about these things in terms of how you can put to words what you're seeing in action, to not put that out there for people to try to hear. And so it started off with just a little smartphone. So I just said yes, like, yep, I'm going to do it. And then from there, I decided to, I was scared shitless to ask Jordan Tony, who is one of my, he was a teammate when I was a kid growing up down in Pueblo. We played football together. And then he also was a wrestler as well. And, he had a fight coming up for Paramount. That's when Paramount was still around. That was like the very last show that Paramount had. And I asked him just kind of, a little bit sheepish and scared, like, do you want to be the first fighter that comes on my show? But that was a huge moment for me. Like because I had never, like, I had always been so reserved or so like self-conscious to ever put myself out there. Like I just like, I had this intense anxiety my entire life until like saying yes, like jumping in both feet with this podcast, of ever like putting myself out there. Like it was an ego thing. It was a pride thing. It was a fear of failure, fear of rejection,
fear of
sort
success.
of situation.
That's
Yeah,
the
I
thing that
mean,
nobody ever
I'll
wants to talk about. Like the biggest fear, not the biggest fear, but one of the biggest fear that lines up there with failure is the fear of success. Because what comes with the fear of success is that fear of imposter syndrome. Like I live this every day because I work in an industry that I had no idea how it worked 2.5 years ago, or I guess I should say about 3 years ago, because I've been there for 2.5 years, and I know a pretty good amount about it now. And I have to fight that daily because I came in as a failed car salesman, a failed fiber optic splice technician, and all these things that I failed at, and I had to jump into a brand new place, and I was so like, it was my only option, in the sense that failure wasn't what I was worried about. It was succeeding and being great, and then having to like defend my position on, becoming this, marketing head in cannabis. I would have never thought that was something that was in the cards for me. And so I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like I've never really had necessarily a major fear of the success, because I know what my work ethic is. You know what I mean? Like, so I know that one way or the other, it's kind of like the theory, the bamboo theory. I'm not sure if you're familiar with how bamboo grows, but
Do
bamboo,
not.
for the people who out there are listening, basically bamboo, you have to water it for 5 years before it starts to break the ground. So it's something it's a long-term investment for something that you're going to have ultimately a massive return on, but you have to put in the work for the long haul for it to get to that point. So you have to water it for 5 years while it's building this underground network of its root structure and system. And anybody who wants to fact check me, go ahead, Google me, bitch. This is how it's going to go. You have to water it for 5 years, but then as soon as it starts to break the ground, it's going to shoot up stories. I mean, I'm talking stories within months. So I mean, and I don't know this exact figure, but just say, for example, you're talking 90. It's going to grow like 90 feet within like 6 months, something around in there, just ridiculous numbers. But the
Yeah.
only way that you can sustain that sort of growth is if you have that root structure, is if you have that foundation. So what does that look like? That looks like showing up every single day. That makes sure that you're paying attention to the details, that you're not getting complacent and being passive about just reading your own news clips. You know what I mean? Like that's where I take it as, like, I come from a baseball background when I was growing up. So having a short-term memory is something that is very familiar for me.
Mm.
It's not like football. I also play football, but with baseball, you're playing multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. You have multiple at bats within a single game. So you have to, it doesn't fucking matter what you did in your last at bat. You have to come ready to play. You have to come ready to make something happen this opportunity, this time around. So I feel
Yeah.
like having that sort of mentality of just a short-term memory with bulletproof confidence is the only way to try to approach life as you're trying to attack it and grow. That's the only way that I've been able to now have a radio show that I'm on with Ron Kruk, who is one of the biggest names in mixed martial arts media over the course of the last couple of decades. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, go pull up any sort of old footage of press conferences, interviews, any of those videos. Ron Kruk is going to be one of those guys that you're seeing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to sit there across from him at the table every single week, and we get to shoot the shit and talk about MMA, the sport that we love. Like, there's so many times where it's like a pinch yourself moment, like that. Holy shit, this is real. Like, we're talking to Boss Root on the other end here, or we're talking to Gilbert Melendez just the other week. Like, I was a huge Scrap Pack fan when I was growing up,
Oh.
mainly
Oh
because of
yeah.
the Diaz brothers, obviously, but all of those guys. I love watching El Nino fight. El Nino against Diego Sanchez is one of the best fights of all time. And
Yeah.
just getting to talk to Gilbert himself about that fight, like, that's like this is real, like, this is happening. But a lot of that is because a lot of that, again, though, is because, yes, Like these guys from Denver Sports Betting, Ryan Garcia, shout out to Ryan. He sought me out and found me and said, "Hey, this is what I want to do. I want to start to promote MMA content more on a showcase level. I think that there is a void of it that's out there as far as what's being covered and spoken of, especially in a mecca like Denver. So let's see what we could start to put together." And that's where we came up with the MMA Plug. We formed the MMA Club, or the MMA Plug, excuse me, as far as our partnership of connections there. That's also along with Kid Cannon TV, who he's putting out some amazing content right now with Front Range Fighter. He's also Homegrown Fighter. That's Bryce Mitchell's videography guy.
Okay.
We built this network, this team of people within the mixed martial arts community and creatives that we're trying to build our own network to put it out there, because really and truly there's not a lot of coverage. Yeah, you do get some stuff with ESPN, but also how much of it with ESPN that a lot of people get to see, are you really entertained by it, or are you really watching, or are you like, oh my God, Stephen A, shut the fuck up, I'm tired of hearing everything that you have to say? Or do you want to start hearing something that is a little bit more to the people, for the people, from the best people within the sport? Like, we're getting it directly from the source. Every single week, we're bringing you some of the best as far as the past, present, and future of MMA. So I'm excited what we've been able to build out here with the MMA Plug presented by DenverSportsBetting.com. Right now, it's housed on Mile High Sports Radio. Anybody can tune into that worldwide live from 7 to 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. I do believe, depending on when this is coming out, this week it's going to be an hour earlier because of the CSU basketball game.
It'll be going up on next Monday, so no worries.
Okay, cool. So yeah, aside from that, we're a weekly show that's on the radio now. But like I say, it's been incredible opportunities left and right. Right now, this week, and by the time it comes out, it'll be right post these guys' fights. But I'm gonna have multiple content series put out for Vince Cachero, the Anomaly, fights this weekend on the UFC Vegas 20 card. There's also going to be a Road to series short film documentary with Alexander the Great Hernandez. I have content that's coming out with Dustin Jacoby. There's just some of these guys who are the most highly fan favorite people out there also as well. Like you wouldn't believe how many people, once somebody like Brandon Royval fights, like I get so much trickle down content or like messages or people hitting me up because of just based on proximity from guys like Brandon. Like
100%.
You've watched Colorado MMA for a long time, right, Justin?
Yeah.
You've been around the game for a minute. You've watched fights. Tell me, is there anybody out there who is, especially in a pound for pound situation, that there's no argument to me, but for me, who is more exciting out there to watch than Brandon Royval?
Zero. There's nobody.
Like, is there a more exciting fighter to watch out there?
No, I mean, no, nobody.
Seriously, like in the entire world.
I think that he was hands down the most entertaining fighter I saw outside of the UFC. And when he made his step into the UFC, I was a little nervous because sometimes the lights get to people. I don't have a personal relationship with Brandon. I think we're friends on Facebook, but I think that's about it. And so I didn't know him enough to know how he was going to shine in that moment, or if he was going to, get put out like a fire at the end of the night. And man, did he freaking bring it, man. Like it's nonstop action. My friend Ron Goldstein, who I used to do the Final Bell with, said it perfectly. He is the bull in the china shop every single time. And he was still that bull in the china shop his first time in the UFC, his second, his third, and then his fourth, even though I think, was it his fourth that was a loss? Even though he had a loss, like, I was thoroughly entertained. That kid, I know he's going to come back and bring it on his next fight in the UFC. Like, Brandon Royval is an amazing fighter. If you guys don't know who he is, make sure to look him up. Look up some of his old fights. Specifically, take a look at his victory against Kai Kara France is really interesting. His victory over Tim Elliott. I mean, shoot, I'm just going to go down listing his freaking wins because they're all so entertaining. Just look him up and watch one of
Oh
them.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I mean, his LFA title fight against Nate Williams, that was insane. Like
Mhm.
21 seconds of just pure violence. It went like high kick to reverse switch all the way into, he went like armbar to omoplata to triangle back to armbar, like just insane transitions. The jiu-jitsu is incredible. The fight before that against Joby Sanchez, where he's just throwing spinning elbows that are just finding their mark until he's able to snatch the arm from Joby there. Insane. Then the one that always pisses me off when they would put him in the broadcast and they would mention him in the same sentence, and they should never ever fucking do it again, was the Jerome Rivera fight. Like I'm so overhearing those two being put in the same sentence. Brandon's such a better fighter on another level than Jerome Rivera that it infuriates me that he gets put into that, just that question, because the way that first fight went the first time. I don't know if you
Yeah.
were, if were you there actually in Vail when that one happened?
I wasn't at that one,
I was going
but
to say I
I
couldn't
think I
remember if you
watched
were,
it.
but
I think I watched it live at the time, like on pay per view or something to that effect. I watched it either that night or the night after.
yeah, that I was there for it, and I mean, it was fucking gruesome the way that his arm broke and snapped once he went up against the cage. But I'm sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, you're probably not in the best position if you just got head kicked and you're running face first to the fucking fence, and then that's how your arm popped. So, and then you want to talk shit after, you go fuck yourself. I
We'll
don't
go
know.
ahead and
Like,
sidestep the animosity. We can tell that it's getting you a little hot just thinking about it. But
I,
I want to take a moment.
I don't know. It's just because I love my teammates, bro.
I get it. I get it, man. Like especially you form such tight knit friendships and brotherhoods and families in these gyms. I jumped a lot around from gym to gym, and every time that I went to a place, like you just get this like overwhelming feeling of family, and it really does start to take place as like if you're a transplant like me to Colorado, they become your family. Like I got my wife, and then I got you got your family at the gym. Like it's just
Yep.
how it happens. And you see these tough individuals go through adversity, and you see what they are capable of, and then you hear what the media says about them, like you were talking before, bringing in fucking Stephen A. Fuck his nuts. Like the way that these people just fighters aren't playing basketball. They're not playing football. They're not playing baseball. And I'm not demeaning these sports by any means, but it's a totally different fucking thing. And for you to come out, and this is probably 2 or 3 weeks right now, separated from when Stephen A. Smith made his comments about females in mixed martial arts. When you use your power, your platform, whatever you want to call it, to then tell people that these women aren't worth watching, I'm sorry. Like it's totally different for me than if he says nobody wants to watch the WNBA on ESPN. It's a different thing to me. I mean, it's no disrespect to those other sports. I do find fighting a much more like primal, like family. Like, I'm having trouble explaining what I'm trying to say, which it doesn't happen to me very often. I'm normally very well with words. Um, but it does piss me off when the people that are at that high echelon of sports media just really demean the one sport that I really hold dear now. And so
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah.
really good that there's people like you out there and that are still getting out that good content, getting out that good information, getting out the good vibes, everything. Like that's another thing that you do, is like you always bring a sense of like positivity to everything that you're doing. Like even in like the worst scenarios, there's always like a sense of positivity and a sense of like hopefulness. And I think that's really important, especially in, a crazy world that we live in where, one day you can have a business and then the next day it can be gone. And I think that keeping that hopefulness is really important. But I want to take a quick side step. We really went into it on that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I want to give a shout out. You were talking about having that short memory. And I wanted to ask you, do you know what animal has the shortest memory?
I mean, obviously, the first thing that comes to the mind is the goldfish,
It's a
but I'm sure
goldfish.
that's not it.
No,
Is
that
it?
is it. Yep, yep. I I love the show Ted Lasso. It's on Apple TV, and it's all about a American football coach that goes over to England to coach soccer for the first time ever. It hands down best feel good show of 2020. If you guys want to smile and laugh and just have a little bit of like forgetting about everything that's happening outside of your doors, watch Ted Lasso. It's worth every minute. And I just wanted to hark back to that when you were talking about having a short memory, because that is a super important part in pretty much anything that you're doing. Because I can guarantee you, no matter what you do or whatever I do, you're going to fail at something. I'm going to fail at something. But the key is to forget about it and move right on to the next thing.
Absolutely, man. I embrace failure. I feel like everybody who's ever been successful has failed. Like I rather fail early and often, but through that failure, you're going to find success. If you're consistently failing, that at least means that you're consistently putting yourself in the fire. You're consistently testing yourself. You're consistently putting in the work to try to be doing something. It's a I'd rather be in a position where I'm trying and failing than not trying at all. That
Yeah.
that's what scares me more than anything is the regret of not putting in the work. I mean, the quote about being the man in the arena, like it's not the critic who counts, it's the man in the arena. So what, fuck the process, fuck the result, whatever it is. If you're putting in the work, eventually something's going to work out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Failure
yeah, go
failure
ahead.
is always going to be the best teacher. Period.
100%.
It's always going to show you where you need to strengthen up. I mean, we're talking about fighting, so might as well talk about fighting. Whether it's your takedown defense, whether it's your takedowns, whether it's your striking defense, like you need to know these things so that the next time something like that comes up, no, it doesn't matter what happened on that last fight. I've addressed that. This guy's not going to do to me what happened prior. A great example of that is elevation or team elevation right here in Denver. 2 weeks ago, Corey Sandhagen against the great Frankie Edgar, a guy who had seen, Aljo took this guy down and was able to kind of do a lot of what he wanted to and got him out of there pretty fast. When Corey Sandhagen fought Aljo, it was a very fast situation once it went to the ground. And Corey took that. And I'm sure he did a lot more than just practice a knee. I'm sure he did a lot more than practice a knee.
Oh
But
yeah.
he had that knee in the exact right position, in the exact right spot, and boom, shut the lights out on a great. Like that's one of the coolest things ever. Bear, you gotta get out of here, buddy. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, but I mean, also I was about to say, to put it on the spotlight from the main event. Unfortunately, it was another elevation guy who was on the less fortunate side of it. But look at the way that Derek Lewis has improved his wrestling. Derek
Yeah.
Lewis has ever since the DC fight has really improved and turned the corner on that aspect of his game.
That specifically his defensive wrestling
Right,
really
defensive
is
wrestling.
improved. And I mean, he said it in his interview. He was waiting for, much like Corey Sandhagen, a knee or an uppercut, and that uppercut
Yep.
just was right there. But that's enough about current events. Let's go ahead and take a step back. What brought you from Pueblo? Because Pueblo is small. Pueblo is really small. It reminds me a lot of my like hometown area back in Arizona, to where you kind of look around and you're like, man, what the hell do you do out here for fun? So how do you get from being in Pueblo, which I'm guessing is, how many people are in Pueblo? Like 50,000?
No, Pueblo's like 110.
Is it really spread out down there? Is that what it is?
Not really. Pueblo just it's weird. It's you can get from one end of town to the other in like 15 minutes, but
Oh shit.
there's there's like 110,000. It's about the same size or relatively around the same size as Fort Collins.
Okay. Well, what got you out of there to? I'm guessing because you went back from Pueblo to Fort Collins, correct?
Yep, yep. I went from I grew up born and raised in Pueblo, and then I went to school at CSU up in Fort Collins. So that's what took me up to Fort Collins, and I just pretty much I stayed living up there until just a few years ago, and then moved down to Denver.
Yeah. And at what point did you start like because you were a big baseball guy growing up, correct?
Big baseball guy growing up. Yep.
So
Coached. I mean, I coached for 7 years after I was done playing. I I love the game, but it it was time to give it up.
let's go ahead and talk about that. Like what makes that change from baseball player, coach to I'm going to go ahead and get punched in the face 3 to 5 nights a week and have somebody try to rip my arms off same amount of times.
Yeah, I feel like from as far as the just from baseball, I grew up around it so much. I mean, I was my old man, he was a baseball coach as well. So and at a very high level, I worked at a baseball complex for a long time. So it's not necessarily that I got burnt out from it, but it wasn't my path. You know what I mean? Like there came a certain point to it to where and maybe call it a little bit of a shadow situation. Like I don't know, like it was maybe subconsciously. I don't know if I ever felt like I could have grown out of my dad's shadow because my dad was a pretty big deal as far as like baseball coaches,
Mhm.
especially within the state of Colorado. All that very well known, highly respected dude. All of that, and I mean, baseball was a great thing for me. It taught me a lot of things for life. I still carry a lot of principles and values and things that I was able to gain from playing and living within the sport of baseball for so many years. But as far as it truly ever being absolutely me or my identity, not like not like I've been able to find that sort of calling for my soul the way that MMA has spoken to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
just
Did
the
you
way
make
that just makes you feel fulfilled in that regard. Or when you sit there and you watch, like it was always like I spent a lot of time in baseball, man, and I feel like just the fact that it's not been a hard thing for me to like I can't really look and say that I regret walking away. Like I miss the kids, I miss building the relationship in that way, but aside from that, I don't really have much to offer the game anymore in that way. Like I felt like whenever the time came that I couldn't give 110% of me back to the game, it was time to get out.
yeah.
I didn't want to hold on to it just for saying that, oh yeah, like just because there's so many people who stay within a job or stay within a role, especially within coaching or something that attaches you to a sport because of the quote unquote clout that may continue to come with it. You know what I mean? Like some people look at it as some sort of source of identification to them, and that's not me, man. Like
Mm.
whatever. Like I was so far removed from that point to where I was cool. It was time for me to pursue a new walk in life.
And had you already found a martial art at that point?
No.
No. How much after the departure from the baseball world did you find your first martial art and what was it?
So it's still my as far as me training, my favorite art is jujitsu. Like as far as for what I actually train, and that's what I do the most of. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I do some striking, but don't get me wrong, it's not my forte by any means. On the ground, I'm just much more inclined as far as especially doing nogi work.
Yeah.
Gi is cool. Like I like learning in the gi because I feel like it sharpens your technique. You have to be
Mhm.
very efficient with learning some of those fundamental principles. But I really and truly because I get to train with I have the privilege of being able to train with some amazing people out there, some of the best people in the world I get to train with. And that's all in a no-gi situation pretty much as far as that goes.
Yeah.
And I've just that's what I've learned. That's what I put myself in the fire with the most. So that's what I like doing the most. But yeah, I don't know. Jiu-jitsu, I started doing that basically. Honestly, it was a pretty significant gap. I stopped coaching in 2014, and then it was just the crazy thoughts of whatever goes on in your mid 20s of trying to figure out who are you, what is life, or what am I trying to be, that whole sort of soul searching situation. And then I started doing all of my media work, and then that was in 2018, about a year after that. So I started training after Coach Mark put me up to a super fight at UFC 241. I fought in the back for my hair. I had to have a 5 minute submission grappling match for rights for my hair. If I lost, I would have had to have shaved my head while we were out there in Anaheim.
And as you can see, for the people that are watching, he still has long, luscious locks.
Yeah. So at least I didn't lose. But
There you
I
go.
also, from that, I learned how much I really didn't know, because like I wrestled when I was young, all the way up until I was like 14, and then I stopped. I didn't wrestle through high school. But I always thought that, okay, yeah, I've got a good base, like I'm gonna be good for the most part. But then in going up against the guy who had some training, and like I was totally cold off the couch for it. Coach Mark just hated my long hair and made me challenge for it and put it on the line. But I stepped up. I said yes. Another example of saying yes. Uh, yeah, I just looked at the situation of, if I didn't step up right then and there in the moment, he's gonna think I was a bitch and that I was backing down. So I was like, fuck that, ain't no bitch in my blood, son. I'm gonna step up and I'm gonna answer the bell. And it is what it is. I started training from there on out, and really have it. I caught the jiu-jitsu bug, and I've been training 5-6 days a week outside of being injured. Whenever those come around, hopefully
Mhm.
they're few and far between for the rest of the future. But yeah, I train on a very regular basis, and I love it. I
And
love it even more than before.
was Factory X the first gym that you walked in and decided to start working at?
Yeah. Yeah,
What
I mean, I had already been through Factory X for a minute because of just my media connection of doing everything there from when it all started with George Tony.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. Is like why there and how? So there we go. We got that.
Yeah, it
So
was for that Paramount show, and then from meeting Jordan, then I met Austin. Then from Austin, I met Yusuf, and then it just kind of snowballed itself up from there. Selena
mhm.
Rowland, George Martinez to Chris Gutierrez, Ian Heinisch back when he was there, Chris Camozzi, all of those guys in that regard. And Factory X, just they really kind of instead of me bouncing around and being at a lot of different spots, Factory X took me in as family.
Yeah,
So because they took me in as kind of as their guy, as their family in-house media guy, whatever you want to call it, that's where loyalty felt huge to me in that regard. And I've been there ever since. I have my studio and my office right there in the gym.
yeah. That's that's a big thing. Like, I mean, it really goes shit. That's that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is just that tight knit feeling of that MMA gym that you don't really get elsewhere. So I think that is all the major stuff that I want to hit. I do have some rapid fire questions for you. These are how I've decided to end every
Let's
single
get it. Let's get it.
episode, and it helps people really get to know the person that I'm talking to, and it can sometimes spark conversations that last for an additional 45 minutes. So we'll see what happens this time. Let's go ahead and start with describe yourself in 3 words.
Relentless forward pursuit.
Ooh. Somebody looked up a thesaurus and used 1 word. Boom. I like it. All right. Are you a morning or a night person?
Both.
Both. All right. What's the first thing you do in the morning?
check my phone.
That's a terrible habit. It's a terrible habit.
Terrible habit.
It
It
should be
is.
jump in a bucket of ice or go meditate for an hour and a half on a mountain. It's a
Well,
terrible
okay, so
answer.
I should say this. It's I check my phone and then I drink fresh celery juice every morning. Fresh celery juice with fresh lemon, key lime, and ginger every morning.
Why those ingredients?
Health benefits. So everything from digestion to general complexion, immunity boosters. Just especially right now, you know, obviously pandemic sort of
Yeah.
bullshit, COVID, all these times right now. I feel like preventative measures are some of the best things that you can do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still gonna go train. I'm still gonna go live my life for the most part, and in that regard, in every way that I possibly can. So that's I feel like by doing that, I'm doing or like if I'm doing everything to keep healthy on my own, then you know I'm not as much at risk.
Yeah. Yeah. That
But
is
yeah, that's just
a very
general
novel
health
way to
in
look at
general, whether it was
things.
pandemic or not. I just feel like as far as being a healthy person overall, like I'm very into like health and fitness on that side of things, or just general human performance. And there's a lot of science and research behind stuff as far as like helping with all the antioxidant content that you're getting from a drink like that, and the some of the chemicals or compounds that are within all of those different things that I'm drinking. They clear free radicals, anti-inflammatory properties. Anybody out there who's into whatever fitness that you're doing and you're doing a lot of it, you're going to face battles of inflammation. So I feel like through nutrition, you can combat a lot of inflammation or some of those minor little injuries or tweaks that you may get by consuming the right fuel, by putting the right proper nutrition and those building blocks in your body for recovery. If you have those within your system versus having, some not so good stuff by having junk food in there, then yeah, you can never outwork a bad diet. Coach Mark Montoya tells us that all the time. You can never outwork a bad diet. I don't care if you come in the gym and you bust your ass the entire time for a couple of hours. That doesn't matter if you go and then you eat a bunch of junk food. You have a bunch of empty calories. Like it's just not going to work for optimum human performance.
Yeah.
And so you talked about trying to keep that positive mindset. Well, in a lot of ways, like it's kind of a childish saying in a way, but you are what you eat. Like if you are consuming a lot of healthy, nutritious foods, then you're going to manifest healthy thoughts. You're going to be able to stay, as far as being immune in times of where, sickness is at the forefront. You're going to be able to stay a little bit ahead of the curve in relation to a lot of other people, I feel like. And, if you're eating the right stuff, then you're going to want to keep on working out. And I don't know, like I know you were going on, you were having your fitness journey that you were posting about throughout the last few months. Once you start working out and training, then you don't want to eat bad stuff. You want to eat stuff that makes you feel good. So I feel like it's a positive feedback loop of, okay, well, I ate some good healthy food, and then I went and worked out, and then boom, then the next day you do the same thing, or you go and you get a really killer workout in. It's like, all right, I got this workout in. I wrung my muscles dry. I twisted that sponge, wrung all the water out, and now I want to absorb it all back in and grow and heal and recover. Do I want to do that with a bunch of shitty shit that's going to make my gut turn and make me feel bad and bloated and hold water retention? Or do I want to have something that's going to make me feel good? And then once you start seeing those results, then it becomes an even bigger positive feedback loop, because then you're like, okay, well, yeah, like I'm starting to feel myself a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm you see that little cut that you didn't see there before a few weeks ago, or like, oh, this shirt fits me like right. Like I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident about myself. If I'm feeling confident, then I can go be positive. If I can feel like I'm having a positive approach, then I'm that much more likely to. We're all going to face adversity, whether you like it or not. Everybody's going to face adversity. So if you are able to come into that sort of situation with an already positive mindset, then it's just a small setback. you're able to you're able to have your correction at a much smaller level than if you had a sour disposition, if you had a fuck the world sort of mentality, which I did have for a long time. And that's why all this to go 360 with everything, that's where it all changes. You know, if you have a positive mindset, you're never going to have as big of a setback.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could just keep on working through it.
Yeah.
I know that was a long-winded answer.
No. You're 100% right. It is always going to be easier to prepare and prevent than it is to repair. And, you know, putting those good fuels into your body, that's all preparation. That's all getting prepared for grueling workouts. That's getting prepared for being exhausted. That's getting prepared for when your body is at that exhaustion level, instead of it giving out in your, you know, your elbow just popping out of socket, you have a little bit more juice and it's going to be able to stay in place. You're still going to hurt, but you're not dealing with a separated shoulder. You're dealing with a sore shoulder. Definitely a better position to be in.
Yep, definitely. Or you know, I mean, if we're talking hydrations, I'm big on drinking enough water. You know, I always have my jug with me. That's a thing of, well, just regular life. Most people don't get enough water in general, but you know, as it talks to, if you're someone who's active and healthy, well, there's a lot of people who get little things like a groin tweak or hamstring tweak or things of that sort. Yeah, a lot of times there is going to be a certain issue of pliability and just lack of stretching and flexibility, but that there what is compounded by that is inflammation. So if you don't have as much inflammation, well then, you know, those little tweaks, those little tears, those little just minor injuries, hopefully they're not as bad. You know, I don't know. I feel like you're never going to be 100% injury proof. We are human, we are mortal, but if we can do some things to kind of help preserve the vessel, if you will, especially, you know, for someone who puts it in the line of fire, like by training and doing jujitsu and shit like that, you know, I'm doing enough physical harm to it that I need to repair it in the right way with nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I need to take care of it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So yeah, I told you, sometimes these questions can lead to a 25-minute conversation.
Yep, exactly. What's the next one? Rapid fire. Let's go.
All right. First concert.
First concert that I can remember.
That you can remember, yeah.
Vertical Horizons.
That's one I'm gonna have to throw on the list to look up because it's drawing a blank on me right now.
She's everything you want. She's everything you need.
Okay.
They
I know
came
exactly
they came to the Colorado State Fair when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. And I won tickets by calling into the radio show. Like, I mean, that's the only song that I knew of or remember of them. But yeah, they came to the radio. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that was it. It was by winning tickets on the radio. And I mean, I know that I went to, like, my parents took me to some of, you know, like whatever stuff at the fair when I was a kid, but I don't remember any of those names or who they might have been. But that's the one that sticks out to me.
Fun fact, my first entrepreneurial like experience was I called into the local Tucson, Arizona radio station that was giving away tickets to Coachella, and I won 2 tickets for, I think they're 3-day passes for Coachella. And I was 16. I got the tickets, put them on eBay, and made like $700.
Oh,
little insight to my first entrepreneurial activity.
Nice.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, tough one. Probably Training Day.
Ooh, it's not a bad one. That is not a bad one. I'll give you that. Do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Yes.
If you were an animal, what animal would you be?
A lion.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. That is Jordan the Lion Kurtz for us. That was a great conversation. I I do want to apologize. I feel like my brain wasn't 100% firing. We'll have to make up for it when I come on your show, and I'll be even more entertaining. I don't know what's going on with my brain today. It's just not firing the way that I normally like it to. But it has been awesome chatting with you. I thank you so much for taking the time. I can see that the time has passed and the sun is now set, and you're still just sitting in your car. But I appreciate the hell of you for taking the time.
No worries, bro.
All right,
yeah,
man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you for having me on. Thank you so much, bro. It was a great conversation.
Hey, anytime, brother. And anytime you want to plug anything like that, let me know. I'm working on getting the video aspect of the show a little bit better, higher quality, and I'll start like linking out to some of your guys' stuff because you are doing great stuff over there.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man. I'm glad that you're getting back into it, bro. That's the first step to success is taking that step, brother, and you're doing it. So I salute
yes.
you. I applaud you. You're saying yes, brother. You're saying yes. Yep, absolutely. You got to keep that positive energy. You got to understand that your situation is not your destination. Sometimes you have to go through it to get to it, but that can't stop you.
Yeah. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you. Drive safe, and I'll see you next time.
Absolutely, brother. You have a great one.
Peace.
Yes, sir. Later.